Penn State fans, guess what? We are hours away from February. That means January's over. I'm happy about it. I think Dave Jones is happy about it. We got plenty to get to here on this blue-white breakdown. We're going to start with the NFL, but I do have some Penn State stuff that Dave is going to want to talk about on the back end of this podcast. He doesn't know what I'm going to ask him, but he's going to love talking about it. But Dave, I just want to start right here. I know you really get into the NFL, especially outside of Penn State season, because your Sundays in season, you're always working towards your power poll. You've got stuff you've got to do Sunday morning for us, and you don't really have a big window for an NFL Sunday. But so the playoffs now, right up your alley. Let me just start here with the conference championship games. I loved Dan Campbell's approach.
No, you didn't.
I know, I'm kidding. I just was trying to wind your watch.
Yeah.
But it is, I know you wrote a column about it. It's a very, I don't know if it's polarizing, but I think people.
Yeah, it's polarizing.
People are kind of, they could see both sides of it, but you have a very clear-cut opinion on some of the fourth down decisions he made.
Well, I'm, you know what I did? I turned into you. I went to a bar on Sunday in Lancaster and met Gordy Jones and Mike Gross. And we watched.
How many beers did you drink?
4.
Then you really didn't turn into me.
The Ravens.
Fans are like, is he saying he drinks a lot? Does he not drink a lot? I just like to leave him hanging.
Lancaster really isn't my territory. That's not my home.
It's called a brew pub that
it was called the dispensary, but it's not a marijuana dispensary.
Too bad. Too bad for you.
I don't know. You don't want to watch the NFL high, do you? Really? It's a beer league.
Each his own, Dave.
Yeah. So we're watching the Ravens Chiefs games. At what point did you think the Ravens were really in trouble? Because I went all the way through that game thinking they're gonna gain their footing. They're gonna win this game. Their defense is too good. They're gonna start running the ball, and they're gonna win the game. At what point did you think the Chiefs were going to win it?
Dave, full disclosure. So the first quarter and a half, I was at my buddy's 9-year-old kid's Pop-A-Shot free throw shooting contest in the East Pennsboro High School gym. It was supposed to be over at 3. It ran so long. I didn't actually get back to. I picked up the game when it was 14-7 Chiefs.
Are you kidding? You?
Dave, I was promised it would be over by 3.
Did they have beer at this thing?
No, it's 8, 9-year-old kids shooting free throws.
It was a joke. Okay, go ahead.
But I did have a case in the. No, I didn't. But when I got back, it was 14-7. The Chiefs had just gone for it on 4th and 1, didn't get it. Apparently, momentum was going to be on the Ravens side. The crowd's roaring, and I just watched maybe for a team that had an identity all year. I just watched a really, really talented team lose their identity. They took the cheese, and they deserved to lose. And the personal fouls.
Well, the stupid crap they were doing.
Yeah, they were just way. You could tell one team had been there before, and you could tell another team was just pressing. And it's unfortunate because I still think the Ravens are the better team, but they played their worst game of the year at the worst time of the year, and I thought they should be embarrassed.
John Harbaugh. That was not a John Harbaugh game. What?
Yeah.
What the hell?
Well, he trusts his coordinators. I thought the offensive coordinator got away from what they do best.
Yeah.
They did shut out the Chiefs in the second half, but the Chiefs to win that game with 17 points was bad.
Yeah. Run the ball. It's raining. Run the ball. Accentuate the capabilities you're
very. That's going to haunt them, and it's going to continue to perpetuate the Lamar narrative about the playoffs.
And that's sad because while he missed some throws, it really wasn't about him.
Yeah,
it was about the lack of a game plan or the getting away from the game plan.
Yeah,
and the knuckleheaded decisions. Who's number 4? What's the kid's name?
He had been good all year. Zay Flowers, the rookie receiver.
Yeah,
but he just lost it.
It almost looked to me like who was their defensive tackle or defensive end who just hauled off and on the offside that gave Kansas City a first down.
It
looked like he did it on purpose.
Yeah. I mean, you could appreciate the intensity, but you know what? The Ravens, Dave, the Ravens all year, I think there were probably 2 or 3 games where where they weren't where they were actually in a game, and I think they lost every game. They lost at home to the Browns. They lost at home to the Colts. They lost at home. Well, the Steelers, I mean, they weren't playing hard, but they've been front runners all year, and they've never really been pushed. And they were pushed, and they reacted very badly. It's awful, and you just can't get a year like this back. They were playing so well. It's really, if you're a Ravens fan, you just would be sizzling mad. Like, really mad.
It's idiot behavior on top of everything else that really killed them. And speaking of not being able to get a year back, the Lions, and Dan Campbell even said it after the game.
He did say
it. Hard to get here. And this smacks of maybe the Bengals a couple years ago, a team that doesn't usually get there, and the stars aligned, and they had their shot, they had their chance. I mean, the Bengals got to the Super Bowl. This team still has not gotten to the Super Bowl, but it was there for them. Now, we'll get into what I wrote about in the column, of course, and Kevin Clark and Mina Kimes and all the millennial metrics analytics proponents. They are saying they're like disgusted, and they can't look. You can't get away from your personality that you've had all year. You can't do that, because if you get away from your personality, what are you? What are you at your core? You know, I am so freaking sick of this. Your personality is whatever the game situation is. I mean, you have a chance, and you know this is true, especially in front of pro fans.
Yeah.
When your team is down 3 scores in the middle of the third quarter, the walls start crumbling in on you, and the fans get surly. And people, if you don't know about 49er fans, they're as hardcore as anybody in the country. You wouldn't think it, but they are. And they were that close from turning on that team.
Yeah.
You take the damn field goal. And I know that kicker is not automatic from 45 yards, but it's about a 2 to 1, 2 out of 3 chance.
60-40, 65-35, something. Yeah.
70% chance that he's going to make that. And you're rolling if he makes that, because then you got a 17-point game with 22 minutes left, and you're putting the onus back on him. And this is what the analytics crowd does not understand, that when you have that situation with a big home, what was a 7.5-point favorite, weren't they?
I actually had the Lions in 7.5, so I know exactly what it was. They covered.
Oh, that's right. They did at the end.
That garbage touchdown.
When you were okay with it. Yeah. It didn't feel like a cover, but it was a cover. You're right. I actually left the TV after Campbell failed on the second, going for it, the 4th and 3.
Yeah.
I know the kicker is just an okay kicker, but he's been in the league 7 years. He's made 77% from between 40 and 49. It's not adverse conditions. Yeah, it's outside, but it was great weather on very nice turf. He's going to make that freaking kick. He's going to make that kick, and you're up 3 scores, and the whole crowd is going to go, oh, God. Yeah. They're all going to start doing this. And you're one mistake. What I said was, what would Bill Belichick have done then? He absolutely would have kicked the field goal. Or do you disagree?
No, he would have.
Yeah.
Well, he also had Adam Vinatieri.
I know, but no matter who he was, if he was halfway dependable, he's thinking about turning the screws a quarter turn more on those guys, and they're one mistake from the game being over. They have to score on 3 straight possessions.
Correct.
2 of them have to be touchdowns. I mean, it's not a hard call. Plus, when you do that desperation crap and act like
your voice just cracked, you're so upset.
What? The gunslinger stuff, or you depend on analytics. When the analytics say you always go for it on the 28 at 4th and 2, you always do that. The numbers are the numbers. The numbers are the numbers.
Which figure in history are you thinking of when you do that impersonation? I want to know. There's somebody in your past that talked to you, or that talked like that.
No, it's all these. It's become very trendy for young NFL reporters to always side with analytics. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
It's always the cranky old men who say, look, the game is about emotion too. And you have to play this like a heads-up poker match.
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's the way Belichick always played it in games like this.
Yeah.
He's going to put the onus back on you.
Yeah.
And if you have a 17-point game with 22 minutes, you've got Brock Purdy not playing very well. I mean, he was starting to throw crazy passes. How about the one against his body that he looped it over the top, barely got it through traffic? Yeah. Any number of things could have happened that in that game. Instead, they miss on the pass. It was a catchable ball, but their wideouts are not like great. The kid missed it, and Goff had to kind of rush the throw. And all of a sudden, you've ignited the fire in that home fan base. You know what? It reminded me of the block kick in the 39-38 game in Columbus.
All right.
Penn State, the crowd all of a sudden, okay, we got this.
Fair.
Even though you remember that, and what Penn State was up double digits, right, at that point.
Well, I know they were up. I think 35-20 going into the fourth, and they were up 38-27 in the fourth. So
I think the block kick was at 38-27, maybe.
Okay.
And that crowd was getting nervous, and that's a college crowd that'll turn on their team. I know. I sold Coca-Cola in Ohio Stadium, and that's what you're talking about here. It isn't raw numbers. It isn't analytics that were all built in October and November. This is a very specific situation in a conference championship game. Now, that's my case. What do you think? What do you honestly think? If you disagree.
So a guy that I really follow when it comes to the NFL, he's got a podcast. He's actually worked with Bill Belichick a couple of times. Michael Lombardi. He worked for Al Davis. He worked for Bill Walsh.
I know Michael Lombardi.
Yeah, so he does 2 podcasts a week at this time of year. He does a Monday reaction podcast to what happened over the weekend, and then he previews the games on Thursday. I don't want to say it was verbatim of what you said, but it was close. The point he made that I would just cover is the thing about the 49ers offense is as dynamic as they are, they don't have a drop back passing game. All their passes are off play action, which means you have to honor the run. If you go up 17, you kind of take that component out of their offense, and they got to throw. Yeah. The other team knows they got to throw, and everything is, it's not as easy for Brock Purdy and Shanahan to call those kind of games.
17 is such a big difference from 14. They didn't need 21. They just needed 17. Yeah. Now, if you want to do some analytics, give me the analytics of scoring if you get the first down on, say, the 25. What is the percentage of times you score from the 25, a touchdown, as opposed to the probability that kicker, what's his name, Hedgley, is going to make
Badgley. I think it was
Badgley. Yeah. So I think we would make that if the middle of 40 to 49 is 77%. 45 would be 72%, something like that. Right. I'll bet you it's not 72% that you score a touchdown from the 25. Am I wrong? No.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that can happen.
There's your analytics. Yeah. So just take the damn field goal and turn the screws on him just a little more. It was a simple decision that he made into this swashbuckling. He's a gunslinger. He's a riverboat gambler because that's who he is. No, you be what the game dictates that you be, and you play as much against turning the screws against your opponent as you do who you are in that situation. And they needed the 49ers. They needed a little help from the 49ers. 49ers are a better team. They needed the 49ers to implode on themselves as much as they needed to beat the 49ers. So that's my whole rationale.
I gotcha.
But
So we got Chiefs, Niners. That was the 2019 season Super Bowl that the Chiefs caught them at the finish. Different teams. Ji'Ayir Brown is now back in the lineup at safety for the Niners. Donovan Smith is the left tackle for the Chiefs. They're probably not going to run into each other on the field. Donovan's won a Super Bowl with the Bucs. He's made a lot of money. I'm happy for Ji'Ayir think about Ji'Ayir's path to the Super Bowl. Didn't play. He's from a New Jersey kid, not highly recruited. Goes to Lackawanna for a couple of years. Bides his time. He gets to Penn State. I think he was there for 3 years. I think he was, but had to wait a little bit. Another JUCO, Jaquan Brisker, also from Lackawanna, but he came up the hard way. He got better at Penn State, played himself into a 3rd-round pick. The Niners traded up to get him. I know that Mahomes and Andy Reid will be looking his way. We could talk about that before the Super Bowl, but I'm just really happy for Ji'Ayir. He's one of the better
good
kids I've talked to. Yeah. He not unlike Michael Robinson, just in terms of their personality,
engaging.
They had fun with the interview process.
Yeah.
They never got nervous when you asked them a question. Yeah. They kind of turned the tables on you a little bit just to see how you would react. I just really, really like that about him.
Talk to you with a smile on his face. Yeah. The whole thing was fun to him. Football is fun to him, right. And he got better and better and better until
much like Michael did.
He was going to be at least a second-day pick by the time he got to the draft. And the best thing about it is he went with a good organization, which can mean everything to what happens to you when you get in the NFL.
It didn't hurt that the starting safety, who was a budding star, tore his ACL. But good opportunity for a good team, and now that he gets more comfortable, I thought the more comfortable he got, Dave, at Penn State, the better he got. So this is going to be a great experience for him, a great springboard for him. I'll be watching him very closely in the Super Bowl. I don't need to watch. I know what Donovan Smith's going to do, but I do think that Jair's going to be, whether it's the run or the pass, he's going to be a guy that, whether it's trying to deal with Kelsey or Pacheco in the run game, he's going to be one of the key players in the game. So we could talk more about him, I think, as we get closer to the Super Bowl. I know you're a Super Bowl historian, much like myself. I don't really have a solid feeling about the game yet. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I was a little surprised the Niners opened as favored. That surprised me. I think they're.
I didn't look at the line, and I was going to say Niners -3. Is that what it is?
It's like I get open at 2.5.
Yeah.
What was going to stick in the back of my head is at home, as heavy favorites, they could have lost both games in the playoffs. So I don't, against teams that have no playoff experience at all. So I don't know if that bodes well for them against the most experienced quarterback, the most experienced head coach, an elite tight end, and an elite defense. I don't know how that's gonna go.
I know the Chiefs have looked on offense about as good as they've looked all year. Not in the last game, but that was an extenuating circumstance against a really good defense in the rain. But I remember how the Chiefs looked in the middle of this season, and that offense, they really missed Tyreek Hill. They looked like they didn't have great wideouts, and Mahomes was struggling.
He was, because I just think that, when you try and repeat as a Super Bowl champ, I don't want to say you're not motivated at midway through the season, but you're really just trying to get into the postseason.
Well, I just didn't think they were very good, right?
They were always good on defense. What Andy Reid did to kind of change the offense and make it more Pacheco friendly, I think it is his finest coaching job in a Hall of Fame career. And you can go back to, his time at the Eagles. I mean, this is by far, I think, this is going to be the one that I think people talk about, even no matter what happens in the game. For him to do what he did with this team, to go into Buffalo, which is not easy to do, to go into Baltimore. I know that Baltimore didn't play well, and to play the number 1 seed. I just think this team is not the equal of the Niners team that won in 19, or the Niners team that won, or excuse me, the Chiefs team that won in 19.
I know what you meant. Yeah.
So I just think this is his finest hour as coach.
If you had to coach them up that much, who are they really? I mean, I just think the 49ers are better. They're better as long as
they might be a pure talent. They might be,
as long as Brock Purdy plays like he did in the fourth quarter. He played free and easy when the run was there. He just took off. He's not a runner. Guy's not a runner, and he was making winning plays.
I don't know. Do you follow Brian Baldinger's stuff on Twitter where he breaks down the games?
No.
You need to follow Brian Baldinger. He is the best at analysis.
Don't start sentences. You need to.
You need to. You need to follow Baldinger anyway. But he drew up a series of clips, and it wasn't. It was the other plays where he knew he was going to get blasted by a defensive lineman, by the Lions' defensive tackles, destroyed the interior of that offensive line. So he was taking shots and throwing dimes down the field the whole game, and he's one tough kid. He isn't a kid anymore, but they pulled this one out of their butts.
Yeah, I thought he
Mr. Irrelevant to save the day when the Trey Lance pick doesn't work out. They would have all been fired if it wasn't for Brock Purdy.
I thought he met his crucible in this game.
Yeah,
because and sure, Dan Campbell helped him out, but because I don't think they win if they get it back to 17. That was 27-10, right? 27-10.
So I think it was 24-7 at the half, and then it was 24-10, so it would have been 27-10. Right?
Yeah, if they get it to 27-10. That is going to be tough for him, but he might have pulled it out anyway. And as we know, all these crazy things happen to the ball flying off the helmet of the DB. But this is the thing about if you get the game to 17, you don't know any of those other things are going to happen because you gain some confidence. Mm-hmm. You're back on a roll. Your guys start playing better. Maybe they don't drop the passes they dropped. Maybe the DB doesn't drop that pass off his face mask and it flies into the hands of, it wasn't Deebo Samuel, it was the other kid.
Mm-hmm. Brandon Ayuk.
I can't get by Detroit. I know we weren't talking about this, but I can't get by Detroit not being in the Super Bowl because I thought it would have been so much fun. I mean, how often in Super Bowl history have we had an underdog like the Lions against a team that's already been there so often, like the Chiefs? Those are always great games. Sometimes it doesn't work out for the underdog, but this is not a great Chiefs team. They could have beaten them, and I'm just kind of not really excited about this game at all. Yeah. I don't know how you feel, but
well, they did open the season by winning at Kansas City. To just point that out, they're a little familiar and they're physical up front. And when you're physical, I think you always have a chance. It really would have come down to Jared Goff is going to have to make some plays, and if he does, they have a shot. If not, they're going to get beat.
I thought he played terrific the whole game. I mean, the plays that were screw-ups were not his fault, almost none of them.
All right, Dave Jones, we have a couple minutes left in this Blue-White Breakdown podcast. Penn State fans, I promise you we're going to get to some Penn State stuff with Dave. But before, I wanted to close with this. How good do you think the average fan that's 35 and under really understands how good Christian McCaffrey is in this league to be doing what he's doing as a white guy? I'm just going to say it.
You just went ahead and said it.
Well, if you just look, I've been racking my brain. I mean, you're talking about
true. It's like a white cornerback, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, and, he is a halfback who could play a wide receiver. He can block. Probably one of the smartest guys on the field. His family has Allentown roots. I was born in Allentown. But he, other than John Riggins and Mike Allstott, and they're fullbacks, they don't even really play the same position.
20 years ago.
Yeah. He's a unicorn. And I can't stress this enough. I don't know that you're ever going to see the likes of him again.
Well, he's a utility back that can do a lot of things. That's why I like him.
Yeah.
He's an interesting player in that you can use him all over the field. Yeah. He's fun to watch. Plus, he's a really tough runner, a tough physical runner. At his age, with the abuse he's taken, he's not a young man anymore. What is he, 31?
No, I'm trying to remember. So I know when he destroyed Iowa in the Rose Bowl, I think that Rose Bowl game was,
where were we?
18 or 19 maybe?
I remember the workout room where we were watching that. And
I want to say he might be
28 then.
He came out early. I want to say Christian's either 26 or 27.
Oh, I didn't know he's that young.
It
seems like he's been around forever. Anyway, he's had injury problems with the Panthers.
That's because they ran him 30 times a game. And
he's got more wear on his tires than the average kid that age. I just thought he was a lot older than that. He did come out early, but he's not a young man anymore.
Yeah,
I mean, he could end up. He's not going to pile up the yards, but you talk about a durable back.
Mm-hmm.
Frank Gore, is Frank Gore in the Hall of Fame yet?
No, he is not in the Hall of Fame. I mean, I don't know if he does get in the Hall of Fame. He's going to have to wait for a while, but because as good as he was, it was more about the length of his career and the consistency of his career.
The durability.
But he was never the best. He was never the best at his position.
And neither is Christian McCaffrey. But Christian McCaffrey, I could see him playing.
I think he's the best running back in the NFL.
Do you?
Oh, easily, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. He is. He can do a lot of things. But I just really, I'm trying to think of like a comp for him. I'll tell you a guy that you're probably not going to agree, but I'll tell you who he reminds me a lot of because of what he can do, how he does it, and his value to the team. It's Marshall Faulk. Marshall
was
Faulk
around forever too. Yeah, he was around forever.
He did a lot of the same things that Christian did, and he did them at an elite level. He's a guy that reminds me a little bit of Christian McCaffrey. I know a lot of people probably don't think that way, but I just look at the impact he has on a game, and nobody, like, he gets open against defensive backs. He can run over linebackers, in short yardage or on the goal line. He almost always gets into the end zone. He picks up the hard yards. Marshall Faulk was like that too. And
Marshall Faulk reinvented himself later in his career and became a utilitarian back, where before he wasn't always. So that's a pretty good comparison.
Yeah.
But who do you have to go back to? You mentioned it, so we'll just say this.
I struggle with this, Dave. I really do.
As far as a white running back is where do we go? Craig James, Craig James with the Patriots.
I mean, I guess technically they played the same position and they were white, but I don't know that. It's to be this good though. It's really hard. I'm gonna have to think about this for a while because it has not happened in a long time.
No, I mean he's a pretty interesting player and a player you can use all over the field. What was the Penn State stuff you were going to ask me?
All right, here we go. See, my segue was start talking about the running back. The fact that I didn't get to the fact that Ed McCaffrey is his dad, Billy the Kid McCaffrey's his uncle. His mom was like an outstanding, I think, swimmer at Stanford. So like Luke McCaffrey, all these McCaffreys that are still playing college football, they're all like I think his brothers. But what I wanted to get to, here's my question. I want to do this with you the next couple of podcasts. I want to put you on the spot when it comes to some Penn State positions that you have covered during your career, which dates back to, is it 1991, Dave, was your first year on the beat?
On the Penn State beat, yeah. I was covering Pitt in 89 and 90.
All right. Here's my first question before we get to the running backs. What was it like being in 91, being out in Los Angeles at the USC game, drinking beers and smoking cigarettes in the press box? That's my first question.
We didn't drink beer.
I was trying to trap you there. But I think you probably could have back then.
I did drink. The only time I drank beer before a game, and I drank two.
Go on.
Now, where do you think it was?
Well, it was probably in Wisconsin.
That's right.
Yeah, it had to have been someplace in the
part
of the country.
Did I already told you?
No, my second guess was going to be Minnesota. I just figured that's where you would be like, you know what? I'm going to have a couple.
These fans, they saw my credential and they started chatting me up. And nobody's nicer than Wisconsin fans. They're out to have fun.
Other than Penn State fans, yeah. Go ahead.
They're out to have fun at the tailgate. And these guys keep chatting me up. He goes, "Why don't you have a beer?" They're like sticking the beer in my face. And I'm young and stupid, and it's 1995. Finally I said, okay, I had lots of time. I was on time getting to the stadium. I was early. So I had one, and I was having so much fun talking to these Badger fans that I had another, and I felt like crap that I never, ever did it again.
You are such a lightweight.
Well,
anyway,
I can't do that before a game. But the Coliseum, yes, it was an open-air press box, and Nick Horvath's next to me, and you didn't even have to get up. I've been to a lot of stadia where or arenas where they actually had a smoking area. Now you can't smoke in the place at all.
Right.
But going out with Vic Furhard from Wisconsin, like out on the outside during halftime of the Final Four in 2000, I remember that Wisconsin guy. And I had all these smoking buddies. I mean, guys in North Carolina who covered Carolina. I'd see them all the time. Colton Tudor, he was a smoking buddy back when I used to smoke. And at USC, it's so long ago that you could actually sit there like, you know, like like one of those like Jim Murray, and they got ashtrays right there in the press box, and you're hitting butts during the game. I mean, I can't believe that actually happened.
Nick Horvath must have been in heaven.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't even have to get up. I mean, it's hard to believe, but you could just hit butts during the game and watch.
Now that USC's in late, do you remember anything about the game real quick? Before I get to my questions.
I remember that they botched it. That was a really good Penn State team that ended up number 3 in the country.
That was the year Terry Smith was the co-captain, right?
After beating Tennessee 42-17 in the Fiesta Bowl in a game they were kind of dominated for 2.5 quarters and then made a big. I remember Derek Bana had a big play that looked like it was going to be a big play in the USC game, and then
that has to be a Penn State defensive back. It sounds just
number
like
4. Yes, Derek Bana.
Was he short by any chance?
Speaking of white defensive backs, yeah, which there would be a long history of Penn State white defensive backs in games in LA. Yeah, I remember him being involved in a play along the sideline that kind of turned the game. I don't even remember if it was positive or negative, but no. The great thing about a place like the LA Coliseum is you can really feel the history. And I wish you had been able to go to the Orange Bowl because, again, another scene smoking butts with Horvath outside behind the press box. And, you know, there's just a door behind the press box. And you're looking out at Liberty City and all these places in Miami. It's kind of a rough area. Around the Orange Bowl, and you can smell the place. You know, when you walk into the Palestra, you smell it. It's like you smell the history. It's like you're smelling Tom Gola's socks. It's all and 50,
Don Calipari suits.
50-year-old caramel corn. You know, it's all those smells melded. The Orange Bowl just smelled like the whole area was so sultry and humid. It just kind of the whole thing smelled like mold, but not a bad smell. I don't even know
not
how
a bad mold.
Yeah, not a bad mold.
Oh.
But you went outside and your shirt is like this. It's we went there twice in 91 and 99. I think this was 99. And those old places, they're just nothing like them. And now we're entombed in these modern press boxes and you don't even really hear the game. You don't. And that's kind of a dirty little secret about what we do. We're kind of divorced from the crowd noises, the smells, and all that. Unlike in those old places, I wish you could have. You never really went to a stadium like that, did you? During your tenure, which started in 2002?
No, because when I joined the beat in 2002, it had already kind of started to pass. It had already kind of, you know, it was not real. There was not really that experience. Dave, I'm not letting go of my Penn State questions for you. We're talking about running backs, Dave. You said 91 you started. I'm going to name some prominent running backs that you covered, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. So obviously, Kajana Carter, Curtis Enis, Larry Johnson Jr., Tony Hunt, Evan Royster, Saquon Barkley. I'm probably forgetting a couple. I'm sorry, but Dave, Kajana Carter or Curtis Enis? Who you got?
Kajana Carter simply because of his speed.
Right. I think it's closer. People forget how good Curtis was.
Curtis Enis was like Mike Tyson's hand speed. You know, a big man who once he got going, you did not want to get in front of him. He was a terrific college back. He really was.
Yeah.
If he had 8 or 10 yards of clean air to get moving, woo! I mean, the game I always remember is the 97 Ohio State game in State College.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing the kid from Downingtown who now I'm forgetting the other Aaron Harris. He and Curtis Enis both had. Huh?
Said I didn't even cover the team that day.
I know it's a long time ago, man.
But I thought maybe. I mean, I think everyone. Kajana Carter was unbelievable, but I just think that people forget how good Curtis was. Different kind of back. Both of them had their NFL careers really snuffed out because of significant knee injuries. I know Curtis was ACL, but I think Curtis Enis was. I thought maybe you might say Enis actually.
Well, you got so used to watching Carter's burst out of a hole.
He was stunning to watch.
Became immune to it. But, man, if I talk to Tim May or one of those guys from Ohio State who saw great players all the time, they would just go, holy crap, because his acceleration was just so smooth. He didn't look like he was necessarily accelerating that fast until he was going by linebackers in the hole like they were standing still. And that was his gift. Curtis was power and speed, but only speed after he got going a little while. Carter's gift was that incredible burst back then. And there were other guys that you really enjoyed from a standpoint of just they were fun to watch. Larry Johnson ran angry. Larry Johnson would.
That's because Larry Johnson was angry.
He was angry.
I'm pretty sure he was angry.
But you know what? I probably didn't cover in my mind, the greatest Penn State back of all time because I think it's Kurt Warner.
I agree with you. I do. Yeah. I'm with you on Kurt Warner. I think that if I had to pick one, considering some of the games he had against some of the defenses he ran against, some of the big games, I think he would be in the Hall of Fame if he didn't have knee injuries.
Yeah, and which he did in Seattle after a pretty good pro career up to that.
That's because Chuck Knox ran him 47 times a game because he didn't want to throw the ball.
Coaches like that don't. They don't exist anymore.
Yeah, what do I care? Ball's not heavy. Hey, two more. I got two more running back questions for you. It's not a question. True or false, Dave? True or false? Tony Hunt was the most underrated running back you covered at Penn State.
You know who I was talking to a couple weeks ago? Is Jay Paterno. And we ended up on the phone for like an hour. Mm-hmm. And Tony Hunt, I brought up Tony Hunt, and he said exactly what you said. I mean, in his tenure. And people can compare Jay.
So you're saying true. I say true as well. It is true for you, right?
Yeah. People can compare Jay to Brian Ferentz if they want, but that isn't true either. I mean, Jay had a long run.
Ferentz is 101, man. He's not. He's got his own.
True either because
history.
Jay had a hand in building the 05 offense, which was pretty damn good, and the 08 offense, which was very good.
At HT, sure.
2 offensive players of the year, and Daryl Clark and Michael Robinson. That can't be that bad. And Tony Hunt was a part of that 05 team that was indispensable because if you needed 4 yards, man, he could get it for you. If you had Robinson and Hunt at once, having to cover them both, out of when they're just getting the spread going. What people forget about the one game they lost, and they lost it basically because of Joe trying to gum it to death. Because that Penn State team was so much better than that Michigan team. That was not a very good Michigan team.
Correct.
They should have won that game going away.
Yep.
But even so, when they needed a drive to go ahead at the end, Michael Robinson and Tony Hunt just owned it, and they ground down the field all the way to a touchdown that looked like it was going to be the winning touchdown because it was very hard to guard them both. If they got going, it was tough. Tony Hunt was a tough the 26 before Saquon Barkley, by the way. Tony Hunt was a tough physical running back. I guess you compare him to oh God,
H.Rod Allen.
No,
that's what I would compare him to.
Oh God, I'm so old. Barkley's understudy, who ended up in the
Miles Sanders.
Miles Sanders, is that a good comparison to Tony?
He reminds me. I see a little K-Tron Allen, and I think has a little bit of Tony Hunt in him too.
Yeah.
I got one more for you. Listen, I think this is a question that Penn State fans are like. I think Evan Royster gets kind of a raw deal in the history books, the all-time leading rusher, but he kind of gets dismissed because he stayed as long as he could. But that doesn't mean he wasn't a really, really good running back. And I think he deserves more credit for what he did at Penn State.
Well, you talk about Frank. I talked about Frank Gore.
Yeah,
just being durable. being durable for that long in a college career. I mean, I grew up in the day where people like Bill Mallory and George Perlis were run their tailback routinely 40 times a game. Evan Royster didn't do that, but he was consistent. Yeah. You know, people forget him because he wasn't exciting, and he wasn't. He was not an exciting runner. He was a plugger, and he was consistent, and he hit a hole.
He was above average at everything, but he wasn't great at anything.
Right, and he wasn't dynamic. He wasn't, but he hit a hole. There are a lot of guys right now who will not hit a crevice and make 2 yards into 4. Yeah. And Evan Royster did that. That's why he got all the yards he got, because he was dependable. But people are never going to give him credit because he wasn't a highlight reel. He just wasn't.
Yeah, I just think that of the running backs that I've covered, I would say that he is a guy. He's the program's all-time leading rusher, and I think people just are like, you know. But I just think that he did play in the NFL. He was a lacrosse player in high school. I just think that he deserves a little bit more. I would be nice if they brought him back and like he would get a standing ovation, because like you said, the guy brought his lunch pail. He always answered the bell. And even against good teams, he may not have gotten 150 yards, but they had to be aware of him at all times.
Remember how Joe really never really liked to give him all that much credit?
I think that's where it started.
What was that about?
I don't know. I think Joe at that point in his life, I think he was a little bit crustier than I think a lot of people would see it that way too. It took a lot to get him going, I think, when it comes. Yeah. And he didn't like to praise anyone, Dave, because he knew that he coached so many great players that if he said one thing about Evan Royster, then, he had some explaining to do, at homecoming, because I can see why Joe did that, because I just think there was no right answer for Joe because he coached so many great players.
To that point, he didn't really give Larry Johnson that much credit.
Right. I think it was smart for him to kind of do it that way.
Yeah. And I got to say, of all you talk about a memorable back, Larry Johnson might have been more memorable than Kajana in that the way he ran and like post-game interviews, and he just said exactly what he thought, and he didn't give a damn what anyone thought.
Yeah.
He ran the way he wanted, and he didn't give it a damn what was in front of him. I mean, it was a memorable guy.
Yeah, and it was just funny to me because my first year was the year he went for 2,000. But I'm like, how did this guy have to wait till his 5th year to get on the field? Like, I don't
right to be angry.
That. Not sure. There might have been a missed evaluation there.
And you'll probably never forget the Auburn game when it was windy and Zach Mills kept throwing balls around in the wind, and they finally brought Robinson in because Larry went crazy after the game. Like, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? But Auburn was actually defending him. They had a couple of good backs too, Cadillac Williams and Ronnie Brown. They were okay.
And they redshirted Brandon Jacobs because they didn't have any room at the end. Yeah, and they had Jason Campbell at quarterback, and their defense was really, really good.
Really good. I mean, it wasn't really Larry. I don't know that Larry was right, but there are very few Penn State players who've said exactly what they thought in the post game, and he was one of them.
I mean, what are you gonna say to him? Look at him, like he was a guy that he got your attention, and he was like a combination of an inside linebacker, defensive end with 4.4 speed playing tailback who never got tired.
He wanted to punish defenders. He wanted to run over them. And it probably killed him in the pros. I mean, he had 2 1,750-yard seasons back to back, didn't he?
I think Herm Edwards ran him 430 times one year. And
oh, my God. And then Vermeil after that, I guess.
I think it was the other way around. It was Vermeil. Okay, so. Remember Vermeil gave him crap coming out of he was like performing like a rookie, and Larry didn't take that well. But eventually, they had Priest Holmes when they drafted Larry.
After that Auburn game in the Citrus Bowl, I'll never forget it because they lost 13-9, and man, he was pissed. And Bud Dahlman, who I just got a beautiful letter from, by the way,
nice.
I a really nice letter from Bud. We didn't always get along back then. He was the media relations director. And after that game, Larry was just going off on why wouldn't they use it was his last game. Why wouldn't they use me more? And Bud took Larry and said, all right, that's enough. And like yanked him out of I couldn't believe it. And we were going, no, that's not enough. That's not enough. But they had to drag him out of there.
Boy, Citrus Bowl, what a great stadium. I just really, really kept it up to date. Great neighborhood, just first class all the way through and through. Great experience.
Do you remember the Sombrero? There's a weird stadium. You went to that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I did. I remember them all. All right, Dave, we are way long here at 45 minutes. But
who knew? We thought we didn't have anything to talk about.
I'm gonna keep surprising you with these Penn State questions, my man.
Well, maybe next time I'll be able to remember Miles Sanders' name. This is what I'm getting now.
Maybe read the record book, okay, my man? Because it's coming. It's coming. I'm coming for you, Jones.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to because I've got all this in my head, and sometimes when recent memories come in, they just stuff up here just leaves. It has to leave. There's not enough room in here.
Yeah,
really.
There's a lot I could say about that comment. I'm just gonna say it's probably not enough room in there. That's probably the tagline right there. I'll see myself out. Not enough room in there, Dave Jones.